when the nights grow long and the wind whispers through bare branches. Something ancient stirs in the soul. The Norse called this season Vetrnætr, or winter nights, a time when the veil between the living and the dead grows thin. But beyond remembrance, it was also about gratitude, protection, and preparing the heart for the cold months ahead. So how do we honor our ancestors and the spirits of the land in this turning of the year? Welcome back to Fireside Frith, a hearth for Norse pagans and the curious alike. I'm Susanna Wandering Star, a kindred leader and local Githya, here to share stories, wisdom, and real talk about living our path today. Whether you're a longtime heathen or just curious about Norse spirituality, you're in the right place. If you want to dive deeper, visit theositruecommunity.com for resources, classes, and community spaces. You can also join our public Facebook group by searching for the Ositru Community Inc. As I've mentioned in a few different episodes, we're in my craft room or my workshop. So it looks a little different than last time. I've been trying to make it more aesthetically pleasing in here, because this is a workshop room. So it's not really a studio. You can see new D&D screen in the background and the table in which I do everything on, from cutting fabric, cutting leather. I put my sewing machine on there. There's all sorts of stuff. 3D printers in the background, projects everywhere. It's organized, it's just cluttered. I mean, you know how craft rooms are, it's just how it is. Anyway, I just wanted to say, usually on our holiday episodes, we have my husband, Zach, on, but his service overseas is really finicky. I don't know if you guys remember the last episode he was on, but we had to cut it really short because it just kept cutting out. It was so bad. So it's just gonna be me this time. This also might be a shorter holiday episode because there's nobody to banter with or to go back and forth with. Leave a comment if you like these shorter episodes, if they work for your commute or however you listen to this podcast. Lately, they've been about 30 minutes long, whereas before they were about an hour, a little more, a little less. Tell me in the comments, do you like these episodes longer or do you like the shorter format? In this episode of Fireside Frith, we'll step into the deep stillness of Vetrnætr, also known as winter nights, one of the most sacred turning points in the Norse year. We'll look at how our ancestors marked this festival, how it connects to modern practices like Samhain or Halloween, and how the themes of remembrance, gratitude, and endurance carry through to today. Together, we'll explore the spirits of the season, the Alfar, the Dísir, and the Landvættir, and reflect on ways to honor them in our own lives as the dark half of the year begins. To really understand the heart of Vetrnætr, we have to look back to the halls lit by firelight, where the harvest was gathered and toasts were raised to the gods and ancestors alike. This wasn't just a seasonal marker. It was a moment of deep connection and reflection. So let's travel back through the sagas and the histories and see how the Norse marked this time of year. And a side note, those of you who are in the variety of different group chats on our Facebook group may have heard that I wrote a book about the holidays. A lot of this episode is taken from that. So if you like the content of this episode, let me know and I can link you to where you can get my book. So anyway, we're going to move on to part 1, historical practice. If you're familiar with the Celtic festival of Halloween, Samhain, you may be surprised to learn that there is a Norse counterpart called Vetrnætr. It is basically the Norse New Year. It's celebrated around the same time of year as Halloween, and it marks the transition into the darker half of the year and shares a seasonal resonance with Samhain, though its origins and practice are distinctly Norse. This seasonal observance was deeply rooted in ancestor veneration, harvest rituals, and the spiritual beliefs of the Norse people. While many modern Halloween traditions stem from Celtic culture, Winter Nights connects us with the customs of ancient Scandinavia. Several different rituals and festivals took place during this time. The Alfabot. This was a sacrifice to the Alfar, or elves, who were likely understood as ancestral spirits, and possibly only the male ancestors, because, we have a different word for the female ones. According to Cormac's saga, Alfablot was performed at burial mounds, where blood was sprinkled on the exterior and the meat from a sacrificial animal was offered to the elves. Haustbot. This was a seasonal bloat, or a sacrifice, to the god Freyr, associated with fertility and good harvests, celebrating during Haustmanöver, or the harvest moon. Though they happen around the same time, it's important to note that Norse society was less focused on the equinox itself and more on agricultural timing of the harvest. Dísir. This was a sacrifice to the Dísir, or the female ancestral spirits. Together, these bloats highlight the importance of honoring both male and female forebears during this sacred season. Ancestor veneration was central to winter nights. The fact that there were separate rituals for different types of ancestral beings, the elves, the Dísir, and the general dead, it speaks to the nuanced spiritual framework of the Norse. In some Scandinavian regions, children would go from homestead to homestead collecting offerings for the ancestors, which they would then bring to burial sites for the various seasonal bloats, a tradition that resembles modern-day trick-or-treating. Another ritual held during this time was sumbel, a ceremonial drinking rite. Participants would pass around a horn of ale or mead, making a series of toasts, first to the gods, second to the ancestors, and third for oaths or boasts. According to the Gisla saga, sumbel was often observed during Vetrnætr. It symbolized a communal reflection and celebration, gratitude for the year's harvest, recognition of divine and ancestral support, and personal commitments for the future. Given that this time marked the Norse New Year, sumbel was a fitting occasion for oaths and intentions. As you guys probably already know, the sources are very limited, but what we know for certain is Vetrnætr often held on the full moon at the beginning of winter, or modern-day October. This was viewed as a time when the veil between the physical and the spirit worlds was thin. And how do we know that Vetrnætr was celebrated at this time of the year? Well, one of the clearest sources is in the Heimskringla, which is a collection of sagas about Norwegian kings written by Snorri Sturluson. And here's the quote from that. Odin established the same law in his land that had been enforced in Asaland. On winter nights, there should be a bloat for a good year. In the middle of winter, a bloat for a good crop. And the third bloat should be on summer day, Sigurblot, or victory bloat. And that's from the Heimskringla, stanza 8. This triad of sacred festivals, winter nights, midwinter or Yule, and summer day or Sigurblot, form the cornerstone of the Norse ritual calendar. Another compelling source is the skaldic poem, and I'm going to butcher this, Austrfararvisur. Anyway, that's the name of the skaldic poem, in which a traveler recounts visiting a homestead near a hof, or a pagan temple. The lady of the house refuses him entry because they were conducting alfablot. The house was hallowed, and because the visitor wasn't pagan, he was seen as a potential threat. The story illustrates how seriously these rituals were taken and reflects the belief that Odin himself desired secrecy and sanctity around these observances. This season was also a time of giving thanks to Freyr for the year's bounty and seeking his blessings for the months to come. In summary, the traditions of winter nights reflect a deep respect for the dead, the cycles of nature, and the divine forces guiding both. We see a complex spiritual landscape filled with ritual, folklore, and seasonal significance, all culminating in a celebration that took place in what is now the October-November timeframe. Unfortunately, by the 15th century, the Christianization of these customs led to associations with witchcraft and devil worship, as was common with many indigenous European festivals.
Hello, this is future Susanna coming to tell you some things that I might have glossed over a little bit. We have archaeological evidence that suggests offerings of food, ale, and sometimes even animals to the land and the spirits of the dead at this time. A lot of these animals were probably not going to make it through winter, and we know this from different archaeological studies done all over Europe. And it was common back in the day to sacrifice animals if you A, couldn't afford to feed them, or B, you didn't think they were going to make it. This is also a practical time of the year where storing food to last us through winter. There's a lot of slaughtering of the animals and acknowledging the hardship of the season that they were about to enter. So in order to last through the winter, they would have to do all of this preparation, and they might have changed the way their homes were a little bit. I know in some cultures, they would have a summer home and a winter home. And it's not so much that they were that wealthy or whatever. It's just that there were certain ways you can insulate your home to keep warm air in and cool air out, whereas other times of the year might allow for more airflow to keep it cool. That being said, we have lots of historical evidence that help us reconstruct and shape our faith in the modern way.
Let's turn our gaze towards the stories that gave this season its deeper spiritual meaning. The Norse didn't just see the changing of the year as a practical event. To them, it echoed the great cycles of myth, death and renewal, harvest and rest, the fading of one light and the rising of another. These stories remind us that Vetrnætr wasn't only about survival, it was about honoring the unseen forces that walk beside us in the dark. Part 2, mythological context. In mythic terms, the turning toward winter mirrors the great cycles of life and death found throughout the Norse lore. Just as the world itself will one day fall in Ragnarok and be reborn anew, the land each year sinks into rest and rises again come spring. The Norse understood this rhythm not as a tragedy, but as a truth, that all things must fade to be renewed. Winter nights was one of the times when the veil between worlds thinned, and the Alfar, as described earlier, were honored. Offerings were made at burial mounds, sometimes at the hearth itself, to welcome these kin back into the circle of the living. In the sagas, we even see noble men and women buried with the honor of becoming Alfar themselves, guardians of the land and family they once knew. Alongside the Alfar came the Dísir, the powerful female spirits of the lineage. They were honored through rituals known as Dísir, offerings that sought their blessing and protection through the long, dark months ahead. Some scholars link them to goddesses like Freya or Frigg, others to the Valkyries who choose the slain, all feminine forces tied to the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. And of course, we have the Landvættir, the spirits of the land itself. As the fields went quiet and the soil froze, offerings were left to ensure their goodwill and protection. To anger them was to invite misfortune. To honor them was to secure the strength of the land through the cold. Even today, many heathens leave small offerings outdoors during this time, a continuation of that ancient pact of respect. The Vanir gods, Freyr, Freya, and Njord, were deeply tied to the harvest and the turning of the seasons. Freyr's myths especially echo the tone of winter nights. His union with the giantess Gerður represents both the fertility of the earth and its slumber. As the world grows cold, the power of the Vanir retreats, resting beneath the frost until spring's renewal. Each of these myths of the ancestors, the Dísir, the spirits of the land, and the Alfar remind us that the veil between life and death is not a wall, but a doorway. Winter Nights asks us to step to that threshold with reverence. It teaches us that the end of one season is not a loss, but a pause, a time to remember, to honor, and to prepare for what comes next. Part 3, Adjacent Holidays. So this is part of the show we will talk about Samhain, which is going to be really short because I am not Celtic pagan, but I will tell you a little bit. Samhain was one of the 4 major fire festivals in the Celtic calendar and marked the final harvest before winter. It was a liminal time, which is basically saying the veil was thin. It was a time to honor the dead. Communities would hold large bonfires. They would feast and offer food and drink to spirits. Animals that wouldn't survive the harsh winter were slaughtered, and the community would gather to share in the abundance one last time before the cold set in. After the fires in each home were extinguished, families would relight them using flames from the central community bonfire, which is kind of cool. They would carry the fire home in carved turnip lanterns, the tradition that evolved into the modern practice of pumpkin carving. Because that veil was thin, it was also believed that spirits could cross into the human world. To avoid being recognized or harmed by wandering spirits, people would disguise themselves as scary or monstrous figures. Sweet cakes, known as soul cakes, were left out as offerings to appease these spirits, another precursor to modern trick-or-treating. While Samhain and Vetrnætr arise from different cultures, they share a common thread. They're both festivals that mark a time of change, reflection, and reverence for the unseen forces that influence the physical world. So the common practices for Samhain, we see fires, divination, honoring your ancestors, pumpkin carving, leaving offerings for spirits, and many other modern Halloween traditions. And that doesn't mean that if you do these things, you are celebrating Samhain, but there's ways that you can Samhainize your Halloween experience or make it more Norse in the Vetrnætr way or Winter Nights. It just depends on how you want to do that.
Hello again from the future. I wanted to take a second to just say the major differences between Samhain and Vetrnætr, because I don't think I was very clear about it. If you recall me telling you about that little story, the woman who turned someone away who wasn't pagan and they were practicing alfablot, that kind of shows us that Vetrnætr is less of a big gathering and more about family and hearth-based rites. In contrast, Samhain in the Celtic lands was a more communal festival where we see these huge bonfires and everybody carries a little bit of the big community bonfire with their turnips and takes it home. So the biggest difference is one is a big party, one is probably your close family and kin.
Part 4, reflection. Before I get to celebrating this holiday on the solo level and for group rituals, I'm going to invite you to reflect. Now, this is not a meditation. This is just a thinking exercise. So if you're operating machinery or driving, don't close your eyes. This is not a meditation. There's something to think about. Picture yourself standing outside on a crisp autumn evening. The last of the harvest has been gathered and the air carries the scent of wood smoke and cooling earth. The wind is quiet, but it feels alive. Before you, the horizon glows with the fading light of the season. Behind you, the long, dark winter waits patiently. You stand at the threshold between them. In this stillness, you can almost sense the presence of those who came before you, your ancestors whose footsteps once pressed into the same soil. Maybe you know their names. Maybe you only know their stories. Or maybe they are simply the ones who walked before you, unseen but never truly gone. Take a moment to acknowledge them. You might whisper a simple thank you, or silently light a candle in your heart or mind space. Then turn your awareness to the land around you, the trees, the stones, the quiet spaces that hold memory. These are your Landvættir, the spirits of place who have watched and guarded long before your time. Feel their steady presence, enduring, ancient, and patient. As you breathe, imagine that gratitude flowing from your heart into the soil, the air, and the unseen realms. The year turns and the world sleeps, yet there is life here in the stillness. Carry this sense of connection with you as we step forward into how we can bring the spirit of Vetrnætr into our lives today. Part 5. Modern application. So my favorite thing about this time of year is understanding that this holiday was so powerful and widespread that so much of the modern commercialized holiday of Halloween has preserved many of the traditions from ancient times. This means that integrating Samhain into your practice can be as simple as doing the usual Halloween festivities, but with the understanding of their origin and doing it with intention. Today, many modern heathens and pagans mark Vetrnætr or Winter Nights as a time to honor the ancestors, the spirits of the dead, and the unseen that weave through the turning of the season. It's a moment of both remembrance and renewal, a way to say, we see you, we remember you, and we will carry the flame forward. Some people blend this observance with practices of Samhain, All Hallows, Dia de los Muertos. I don't know if I said that right. And that's perfectly fine. The heart of the season is the same: connection, gratitude, and the recognition that life and death walk hand in hand. For the solitary practitioner, you don't need a great hall or a huge bonfire to celebrate Winter Nights, just intention. If you live in an apartment or somewhere that doesn't allow open flames, you can still set up a small ancestor altar on a shelf, a windowsill, coffee table, wherever works for you. If you have small children or dogs with a tail that wags a lot, or cats that like to knock things over, much like my cat's knocking over my computer before I started recording. Just be careful where you put your altar, but just choose a place that feels right to you and that is safe from your fur babies and your human babies. You can place a photo, a keepsake, or even just a slip of paper with names written on it. Offer water, tea, or a bit of your dinner, whatever feels sincere and meaningful. You might also choose to speak aloud your gratitude. Thank your ancestors, your mentors, or even beloved pets who have passed for the ways they've shaped your life. You can light a candle or turn on a warm lamp, symbolizing that hearth fire of remembrance. For those who have outdoor access, you can hold a small bloat or toast under the stars, pouring out a libation of mead, cider, or water if you are needing a non-alcoholic beverage, because water is life, while calling the names of those you honor. Leave offerings of seasonal foods, bread, apples, or grains for the Landvættir and local wildlife. And that's not to say that if you live in an apartment, you can't do a bloat. You can still do a bloat. You just might not pour your offering out on the ground. Then you'd have to clean it up. And then how does that help you, In that sense, you would find a different way of sending it to the gods or the ancestors. And, get creative, have fun with it. As we say many times on this show, there's no right way to do this. Sure, there might be some wrong ways, but just have fun. Do what feels right to you. Do what you're called to do. So for me, when it comes to my personal seasonal altar, I kind of like to put symbols of my ancestors instead of specifics, because there's many ancestors that I don't know, obviously, because, you can only go back so far, and I've only been alive for so long. Some of them I only know their stories, and that's okay, but I typically will have some European things and some Native American things and put them up there with symbols of our cultures that are meaningful to me. And part of my personal practice is to look at the stories of these symbols and what they mean. I know on my Native American side, there's a spiral and it has some dots on it, and it's like very symbolic. And that whole expanding circular cyclical thing, it really resonates with me because it's on both in my Norse faith and in my Native American heritage. So it's a really good blend. So I like to revisit the meanings and the stories of those symbols with certain feathers and certain animals and what their meanings are. Just having that once a year little research project or reading a little story about these things on both my white side and my native side, it's really grounding. And it's a really good way to start the winter, especially when I lived back home in Alaska, because the winter up there is very different than the winter here in Texas. The winter up there was cold and dark, and there wasn't a lot of sunlight, and winters in Alaska just last a very long time, and it can get really depressing with the lack of vitamin D and the lack of sunlight. I mean, I like the dark, I like the cold, because I like to layer up my clothing. I don't like tank tops. I really don't. But, I live in Texas now, so you can take the girl out of Alaska or whatever, but not the Alaska out of the girl. I don't know. That's kind of what I like to do. You can put pictures up of specific ancestors, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just let you know what I do because, I don't know, it feels right to me. That way, nobody has to feel like I didn't call out their name because I didn't call out any of them equally. No one gets to feel special or isolated, However you do it, the goal isn't grandeur, it's connection. Even a small whispered thank you on a quiet night can carry across the veil. For groups and communities, when Winter Nights is celebrated in a community, it becomes a shared act of memory and protection. Large or small, every gathering can reflect the heart of this season. For smaller groups, a simple ancestor feast works beautifully. Everyone can bring a dish that honors their heritage or a loved one who has passed. Before eating, you can share stories or raise a horn in remembrance, but don't pass it around because germs, we're wiser than we used to be. My favorite thing is just everybody bring a vessel to drink out of, or I have the red Solo cups. We pour from a pitcher, so nobody has to swap spit. And that it's a little harder to tell whose turn it is to be telling the story, that way because everyone has their own cup instead of whoever has the horn gets to speak. So play that one by ear. Whenever it's the next person's time to speak, they will speak of those they wish to honor. And I don't do any personal bloats because this is the time of the year that my kindred, we do our Sumbul in November, and we do our Vetrnætr or Samhain, depending on who's leading the ritual. But so many things are similar that when we create rituals for the kindred, we're pretty aware that not everyone in our group is so strictly Norse that they don't want to add anything else. So sometimes we will add different adjacent holiday themes to a portion of the ritual. Larger gatherings might hold a ritual or a bloat at dusk, calling on the Dísir, the Alfar, and Landvættir for blessing and protection through the winter. Some groups also choose to honor multiple paths. Like I said earlier, you can blend elements of Norse, Celtic, or even local folk traditions. You might open with a land acknowledgement, like candles for the departed, and close with a shared meal or fire circle. The beauty of this season is its flexibility. What matters most is the intention and the heart. Whether you're in a mead hall, a living room, or a Zoom call, Winter Nights asks us to pause, remember, and reaffirm that the bonds between us, living, dead, and divine, still endure. However you celebrate, take time to honor the rhythm of the year. The long nights ahead invite us to turn inward, to listen to the voices of the past, and to tend the light within our own hearth.
Okay, this is the last bit that I'm going to add in, and then I swear I'm done adding to the edits. What I came back to say was that when we look at this holiday in a modern sense, there's 3 themes that really stick out to me for Vetrnætr. And those are gratitude, protection, and endurance. With gratitude, I know I've mentioned it several times in this podcast, but I didn't really deep dive on why I think it's important. And that's not to say that my way is the right way, just so we can have a little bit of fellowship and I can share with you my thoughts on that. I feel like gratitude is really important when we're talking about ancestor veneration and the reciprocity. The Norse worldview is built on frith, that peaceful kinship, and the whole gift giving, the gift for gift. That's like what bloat is. Gratitude to the ancestors and the Vanir maintains that sacred exchange. We give thanks, and in return, they bless us with prosperity and wisdom. And I know some people don't want to honor all of their ancestors. They might not have great ancestors, and that's fine. However, somehow it brought us to this moment. It brought you into being. So even if you have crappy ancestors or people who were on the right or wrong side of history, depending on your views, I think it's important to recognize that you wouldn't be here without that. And I think that's really beautiful because nature has a way of turning tragedies into beautiful things. And that's something that we can't just forget or think that everything's all doom and gloom, because it's not. So having that gratitude for the reciprocity with our ancestors and the Vanir especially. Another aspect of that would be the end of harvest. Winter Nights marks the final harvest. Everything that sustains you through the cold months was made possible by the labor of those before you, both human and divine, and your own hard labors. The other thing about the harvest end that we can really take from that, so not all of us are farmers, not all of us have a garden. Think about winter metaphorically. It's a hard time. And if you go through hard times without any mental preparedness, they can seem devastating. But if you do the hard work to help your mind garden flourish, and you could be better prepared for those hard times or winter. The connection through memory is also part of gratitude. Speaking the names of your ancestors or their memories and keeping them alive in a spiritual sense, that remembrance is a form of magic that strengthens the web of weird between generations, and it can also help you heal generational trauma. And it really does suck when you're the one that is healing the generational trauma, because sometimes it is very difficult because certain things can be so ingrained in us that it feels like you're on a quest and you're breaking a curse. I know I'm a freaking nerd, as you guys can see. So that's like the easiest way for me to explain it. It literally feels like breaking a curse. And they make whole movies about that. So if life seems hard, just remember that you're doing epic things. Lastly, for gratitude, I have Vanir's blessings. So the Vanir, we're talking about Freya, Freyr, and Njord. They're all tied to fertility, peace, and abundance. Offering gratitude now ensures continued harmony and, like I said earlier, that reciprocity, that gift for gift, and that luck through that dormant winter season. Because if you take care of them now, you honor those deities now, then they'll remember you when you're going to plant those seeds. Like I said earlier, thinking about this metaphorically, it doesn't always have to mean gardening or farming. Think about the seeds you want to plant. In most of the world, we celebrate New Year's at the end of December, beginning of January, ask for these blessings and give these gifts and these offerings to the Vanir. At the beginning of winter, we're saying, hey, I know you're going away for some time, but I still remember you, and I'm still going to call upon you and think of you. Because what happens in the new year, we all make these promises and New Year's resolutions or what have you. And then they kind of go away pretty quickly. Typically, anyways. I don't want to say that for everyone. I gave up on those like a decade ago, so whatever. Remember, gratitude, all of those reasons I just listed, that is why it's important. And I know gratitude, it sounds all like, ugh, so gushy. I think it's important, and you don't have to make a big thank you card or like do something nuts. You just think about these things. Reciprocity, the harvest end, preparing for winter, both mentally and physically, however you do that. The connection with your memory, that's not just honoring the ancestors, but breaking those curses and keeping the positive part of their memory alive. And lastly, the Vanir's blessings. Next theme I wanted to talk about was protection. We're talking about protection as the darkness deepens. And you can think about this as the winter days are shorter than the summer days, or you could think about it metaphorically, because a lot of people get seasonal depression in the wintertime. So we have our practical and our spiritual safeguarding as the days shorten and travel becomes more dangerous. And not so much today because of technology and the advent of modern things, but it was traditional back in the day to make offerings for protection, not just from the cold, but from ill luck, from curses, from illness, and for evil spirits or dark spirits that are out and about because the days are shorter. Like I said, you can think about that metaphorically, not just physically, not just spiritually. One of the unseen forces that roam the dark is depression, that seasonal depression I was talking about. In winter is a common time for people to get sick, so protection is important in a practical sense and in a spiritual sense. I know I mentioned honoring the Dísir and the Landvættir, but appeasing the local spirits was typically seen to ensure safe passage through the thinning time when the veil is weak, or so to speak. Oh, that rhymed. And so when those restless energies are in the air, honoring the Dísir and the Landvættir would help protect your home and your spiritual well-being, as well as, the physical domain in which you abide. And if you want, you can ward the home. So in a spiritual sense, you can bless your home. You can set protective bind runes on each of your doors. Not like carved into the doors unless you own your home and you want to do that, but do not carve into anything. Just really think about it, because this is it's a big thing. It's as simple as like putting it on some art, putting it above your door. That way you have a protective ward over the portal between your home and outside of your home. And my last note on protection is your inner fortitude. I know I keep saying, think about this metaphorically, look inside, look mental, and I mean it. Protection also means setting emotional and spiritual boundaries, taking stock of what needs guarding within yourself before winter's stillness brings introspection. A lot of people don't want to hang out as much in the wintertime because it's cold and easier to eat soup and watch anime than it is to go outside and do things when it's cold. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just turning into an introvert slowly. But sometimes that loneliness and that stillness brings up feelings and emotions that are not so positive. And that kind of goes along with that seasonal depression. So you need to take those steps at the beginning of winter to protect yourself, not just in the sense of, oh, there's bears out there, because where you live, there might not be bears. The last theme I'm going to talk about before we get to the outro of this episode is endurance, preparing for the long winter. This is a season of stillness. Winter is the great equalizer. Only those who planned and endured together survived. It's a time of rest, reflection, and reliance on the strength of community. So back in the day, people used to combine resources, and it's easier to chop wood for one home with a few families in it than each home having their own fires. You know what I'm saying? If you think about it that way, and it was like a time where they could do that because they're not doing stuff and running around. They're just trying to stay warm and survive through the winter. And sometimes life is hard like that, and you just have to make do and survive. And as awful as that sounds, it's part of the cycles. You'll get through it. Just protect yourself, have gratitude, and one foot in front of the other. It's a tough world out there. Another thing I want to mention under the endurance theme is one of these lessons from the North. The Norse valued Other, which is your spirit or inspiration, as much as physical survival. Endurance means nurturing your inner flame even when everything else seems frozen. When nothing seems to be moving forward and everything just feels desolate, remember to kindle your own flame and remember your goals, your aspirations, the things that keep you moving forward. Because even if you feel like you're not moving forward, get a little introspective, get a little creative with it, and just listen to your inner voice and figure out like, well, maybe I needed this stillness, or what is this trying to teach me? And that's where you get that true resilience and that endurance to get through these hard times. A, preparing for it, and B, when all seems lost, look within and know that you have your back, the gods have your back, the ancestors have your back. I have your back. You're going to get through this. The next one under endurance is spiritual perseverance. That really sums up what all of this is talking about. So just as the land sleeps under the snow, your spiritual practice may quiet, and that's okay. Different times of the year, things ebb and flow. Sometimes we're very active in our spiritual practice, and sometimes we're not as active, and that's okay. Like I said earlier and on many different episodes, there's no singular right way to do this. It is a Reconstructionist faith, and what calls to you and what feels right to you is going to be different than what feels right to me. Sure, there could be a wrong way. There probably is a lot of wrong ways. But just remember that spiritual perseverance, just because your spiritual practice may lessen or quiet, does not mean it's weaker, and it does not mean it's going away. Endurance is about trusting that that light will return. Lastly, on endurance, we have honoring ancestral strength. Your forebears face very harsh winters with far less than what we have today. And they didn't have Netflix to keep them entertained. That's probably why so many of their sagas are so wordy, just because there was no other entertainment. Anyway, my ADHD meds are wearing off. Try to stay on task here. Remembering the endurance and the resilience of your ancestors can possibly inspire the gratitude and the courage in your own trials throughout this winter season or this still season. And that's all I have to say. Those are the three themes I really wanted to speak on that really had to do with this season and this holiday, winter nights or Vetrnætr. Just remember gratitude, protection, and endurance. You have those three things, you're going to be just fine.
As the nights grow longer and the air grows colder, we find ourselves standing in that liminal space between seasons, between life and death, light and dark, memory and mystery. Vetrnætr invites us to honor what has come before, to listen for the whispers of our ancestors and the spirits of the land, and to prepare our hearts for the long winter ahead. However you choose to mark this turning, whether through quiet remembrance, offerings beneath the stars, or a simple moment of reflection, you may find strength in your roots and peace in your stillness. Next week, we'll be diving deep, quite literally, into the very fabric of Norse belief, the 9 realms of Norse cosmology. We'll explore how the ancients understood the structure of the universe, from the radiant heights of Asgard to the shadowed depths of Helheim, and how those realms still shape our modern understanding of the hidden world. Sources for this episode are the blog of thepaganjourney.weebly.com, their article called Winter Nights, winternightsfestival.com about Vetrnætr, thetroth.org, their article on Winter Nights, and the Heimskringla found at gutenberg.org, and the following YouTube channels. Of course, we have Norse Magic and Beliefs, Ari Tiger, and Irish Myths. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Fireside Frith. If you enjoyed our journey through Vetrnætr and the Veil Between, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you listen and share this episode with your community. Until next time, may your hearth burn bright and your ancestors walk beside you and your spirit stay ever curious.